You walk in with $60 and a coupon for a free well drink. Some guys walk out of that building $40 lighter and forget about it by Tuesday. You don't. Something switches on in you that night that never fully switches back off, and it's going to take you 16 years, one marriage, and a stretcher in a parking garage before you understand what that something actually was. This is your life, every level, as a casino gambler. Stay to the end, because the way this one closes is not the way you think it closes. Level 1, the free drink. You're 28, 6 years into running a forklift at the Meridian Distribution Warehouse. $17.40 an hour. Direct deposit every other Friday like a heartbeat you don't have to think about. It's Dion's idea. His birthday, a Saturday, 40 minutes down the highway to the Riverboat Casino, because Dion's cousin works the buffet and gets you both into the player's line for free. You bring $60, because that's what's left after gas and after you slide 2 20s into Mia's purse for Zoe's daycare. And you tell yourself you're just watching. You are not just watching for very long. Blackjack. Third hand. You hit an 11 against a dealer showing a 6, and something happens in your chest that has never once happened on that warehouse floor in 6 years. 40 minutes later, you're up $580. You cash out at $640 because Dion grabs your arm and says, "Get up, man. Get up while you're up." And it is the only piece of gambling advice anybody will ever give you for free. $640. You made more sitting at a felt table for 40 minutes than you make in a full week hauling pallets. And you do that math in the parking lot before the truck's even in reverse. You will be doing that math for the next 16 years. It comes out the same way every single time. And every single time, it feels like a secret nobody else has found yet. 2 towns over, your mother is 63 and still cleaning 3 houses a week because the home health job dried up when her client passed. The power bill sits behind the toaster. $214 past due, printed in the red ink that always seems reserved for bad news. She keeps the bill money in a cookie tin with a faded rooster on the lid, a tin that hasn't held a cookie since you were in middle school, and she counts it out in 5s every Sunday morning before church. You've watched her do that your whole life without understanding what you were looking at. You still don't, not for a long time. You slip her 100 out of the winnings and tell her you picked up overtime. She doesn't check. She never checks. That's the whole quiet tragedy of people who love you. They take your word because the alternative is doubting you, and doubting you costs more than they've got left to spend. You don't tell Mia the real number either. You tell her 300, which is technically true, and you notice how easily the lie sits in your mouth, how little it costs you to say it. That should scare you more than it does. You go back the following Saturday anyway. That's where Vic finds you. Vic doesn't chase whales. Vic grows them, and he's been watching your table from the pit rail with the patient face of a man who has all night and knows it. He hands you a player's card before you even think to ask for one. Free parking validation, free buffet on your birthday, a comped room the next time you stay past midnight. Every single word of that is true. Every single word of it will end up costing you more than it will ever give back. You just don't have that arithmetic yet. Level 2, the player's card. 6 weeks in, you've got that card number memorized like your own social security. You come back most Fridays now, sometimes a Tuesday if the week's been long enough to earn it, you tell yourself. There's a man 2 seats down from the same video poker machine every single time you cross the slot floor. Duke, mid-60s, cardigan no matter the season, a styrofoam cup of coffee gone cold sometime around the Clinton administration. Everybody likes Duke. Nobody wants to be Duke. It takes you 8 months to understand Duke isn't furniture on that floor. Duke is the forecast, sitting right out in plain view, and the casino doesn't hide him because Duke is advertising, whether he knows it or not. You start a habit without noticing you've started it. Every night before bed, you count, not the winnings, the whole picture. What came in, what went out, what's left, folded into a rubber band in the sock drawer. It feels responsible. It feels like discipline. You don't clock yet that a man doing an honest job never has to count his money in the dark with the door shut. You marry the math wrong without noticing that either. Some nights you're up 300-400. And Vic comps the room. And you tell yourself the whole trip cost nothing, forgetting entirely what you fed the machines to earn that comp in the first place. Free starts feeling like a fact instead of a hook. You start leaving the warehouse floor 60 seconds after the horn now instead of finishing your last pallet, because the tables don't care what time you show up, only that you do. Mia notices the calendar before she notices the money. Poker night with the guys, you say, twice a month. Then most weeks. She believes you the way people believe the people they love, completely, right up until the exact moment they stop. One Thursday, you bring home a small win and buy Zoe a bike you can't quite explain, and Mia hugs you and calls you the best dad on the block, and you feel something you'll spend years trying to name. It isn't pride. It's closer to the feeling of borrowing against a bill that hasn't arrived in the mail yet. Level 3, the marker. Vic slides a slip of paper across the felt on a Friday when your cash runs out at 11 and the shoe's still hot. You don't need cash tonight, he says. Just sign here. That's the whole pitch. 4 words. And here's the part nobody explains standing at that rail. A marker is a check the casino agrees not to cash yet. It is due whether you win with it or lose with it. It does not care how your night goes. $500 the first time. You clear it Monday out of the checking account before Mia even glances at the statement. And it feels like nothing, like borrowing a cup of sugar from a neighbor who happens to own a casino. You start noticing something about Vic if you pay attention, and eventually you can't not pay attention. He never once comps you on a night you're winning. The nights he shows up smiling, room key already printed, a bottle with a French name on it already on ice, are always the nights you're down $800-900 and still sitting there at 11 o'clock. You tell yourself it's a reward. It takes you 2 more years to understand it's a refuel. Here's the sentence that takes you a decade to fully understand. The house doesn't need to cheat you. It only needs to be patient. Every game on that floor is beatable in the short run and unbeatable in the long run. And the entire business model rests on convincing you that tonight is the short run. The whole operation runs on one question. The same question that's about to run your whole life for the next several years. Can you cover it? And can you cover it today? By spring, you're carrying 3 markers, running $4,200 total, and the cage calls politely, the way a dentist's office calls. Friendly reminders, with your name spelled correctly. You cover it. You always cover it, right up until the week you can't. And you learn the same lesson every gambler learns in exactly this order. First, you play with your own money. Then, you play with the casino's money. Then you play with money that belongs to your mortgage. Mia finds a marker slip in your jacket doing laundry. Folded small, the way you fold things you're hoping will stay folded forever. She doesn't scream. She sets it on the kitchen table between you, like evidence in a trial only she's been paying attention to, and asks one question. Not, what is it? How long? You tell her it's handled. You will say the words, it's handled, so many more times over the next 2 years that they stop meaning anything, to her or to you. Level 4. The chase. You start chasing. That's the word every gambler learns eventually. Playing bigger. Not because you feel lucky, but because you need last week back before you can afford to stop. And the math behind that sentence has never once worked. Not for anyone. Not one single time in the history of the game. A guy from the loading dock knows a guy who lends outside the casino. No marker, no paperwork the bank ever sees. Just a handshake and a phone number. $2,000 out the door on a Friday. $2,900 due in 3 weeks. That loan doesn't care about markers or comps or your player tier. It has its own arithmetic, and its arithmetic is worse than anything the casino ever dreamed up. You sell your father's old table saw and half a garage of tools for $380 to a stranger off Marketplace, and you tell Mia somebody broke into the truck bed, and she looks at a lock that isn't broken and says nothing, which is so much worse than saying something. Your brother Nate starts doing the thing Duke does, without either of you noticing it, sitting quietly at the edge of every family gathering, watching your hands instead of your face. You miss Zoe's kindergarten recital because the shoe's hot on a Wednesday afternoon, and you tell yourself you'll catch the next one. There is no next one. There's only the video Mia sends you afterward, which you watch alone in the truck, in the casino parking garage, with the engine running, and something in you already senses exactly what that parking garage is going to mean to you later, even if you can't say it out loud yet. Your phone lights up mid-shoe one Tuesday afternoon. Zoe's school. 3 calls in a row. You turn the phone face down on the felt because the count's running hot, and you can feel the table about to turn. You can always feel the table about to turn. By the time you call back 4 hours later, Zoe's already home. Fine. A fever and a nap in the nurse's office. Nothing at all. It's the smallest possible near miss in the world. It's also the first time you understand, with total clarity, that you would have stayed at that table, even if it hadn't been nothing. Level 5, the reckoning. Ray sits 2 stools down most nights. 44. A roofer laughs loud enough to carry over the slot chimes. Nobody at that table has ever once seen Ray lose his temper. In February, on a Tuesday that starts out exactly like every other Tuesday, Ray goes down $11,000 in under 3 hours on Baccarat. And somewhere around hand 30, his face goes gray, and he puts both hands flat on the felt, like he's steadying a boat that's already gone under. Then, he's on the floor. The pit doesn't stop dealing at the next table over, because that is the house rule. The game covers, always. And you will remember that detail for the rest of your life. Chips still clicking, 12 feet from a man having a heart attack. Ray survives. Ray does not come back to that casino. Ray also does not come back to being the guy who laughed loud enough to carry over the chimes. Not that you ever see again. 2 weeks later, a certified letter arrives at the house with your name on it, a marker the casino ran through your bank, the way they're legally allowed to once it comes due unpaid. It bounces. The letter uses a word you have never once heard applied to yourself. prosecution. You cover it inside the grace period with money borrowed from the outside guy at a rate that should be illegal, and technically is. And that night you sit at your own kitchen table and finally finish math you've been avoiding for years. Somewhere past $60,000 gone since Duke's video poker machine first caught your eye across a slot floor. You stop counting. For the first time in your life, counting hurts worse than not knowing. Nate corners you in the garage on a Sunday, keys still in his hand from letting himself in unannounced. He doesn't yell. He's already talked to Mia. He already knows the number, or close enough to it that pretending stops working. He says the county's got a real hotline, a real program, and he will personally drive you there himself if you can't drive yourself. And those are the only two options left standing on the table. Mia gives you the sentence you've been half waiting for without ever admitting you were waiting. Get help, or she takes Zoe to her mother's. She is not bluffing. You have never once heard her voice sound like that, flat and finished. A door instead of a window. Level 6, the walkaway. You can't quit the casino by deciding to. Deciding implies you're still the one in charge of that side of the ledger, and by now, some other version of you has been running it for years. What you can actually do is sign a form. It's called self-exclusion, 1 page, notarized, and it bans you from every licensed casino in the state. Minimum 5 years, no appeals, no exceptions. No version of you 3 drinks deep at 1 a.m. gets to overrule the version of you signing this pen right now. 16 years to the month since a birthday coupon and a hot shoe of blackjack. And the clerk barely looks up while you sign. She has watched 10,000 versions of you sign that exact same line. You settled the last of it at the cage on a gray Thursday, $6,800. Every dollar you can scrape and borrow honestly this time, and the woman behind the glass stamps the paper void and slides it back without ceremony, the way you'd hand back a library card that's overdue. You ask her, half joking, half not, if people ever come back after signing. Some do, she says. Through the parking lot instead of the front door. Some don't. She can't tell you in advance which one you'll be. Nobody can. That's the whole terrifying honesty of the thing. Nate drives you to a church basement on a Thursday night and doesn't say a single word the entire ride, which turns out to be its own kind of mercy. A guy named Frank runs the meeting, 22 years since his last bet. It takes 11 weeks of sitting silent before you say the true sentence out loud for the first time in your life. I stole from my own family to feed a machine. Nobody gasps. Frank just nods, the way you'd nod at somebody announcing it's raining outside. And that one ordinary nod does more for you than any lecture on earth ever could have. Level 7, the grind. Frank has a rule he repeats like a station announcement. Protect your mornings. A man who's up, clear-headed, and moving by 7 can still make a decision. After that, the day starts making decisions for him. You get your CDL the following spring, 45 years old, sitting in a classroom full of kids half your age, and you drive your first long haul with a photo of Zoe taped to the dash where the GPS used to sit. $58,000 a year, company driver, direct deposit every other Friday, and you set up an automatic transfer the second that check lands, before you're awake enough to argue with yourself, into an account you name, on purpose, never again. 2 years in, you buy your own truck, a used Freightliner with 400,000 miles on it, $31,000 financed, and for the first time since Duke's machine, your name is the only name on anything you own. You build 3 months of expenses into a separate account, and you never once touch it. Not through the slow month, not through the transmission that dies outside Amarillo, because the rule only works if it's a rule and not a suggestion you renegotiate at midnight. 9 months into owning that truck free and clear, you're hauling a load through a stretch of interstate you've never run before, and a billboard comes up on the right, 40 feet tall, a jackpot number lit up gold, 40 minutes from the next exit. You don't decide to pull off. Your hands just do it. At a gas station you've never been to, engine running, and you sit there for 31 minutes doing nothing but breathing and watching a pump you never got out to use. You don't call Frank that night. You almost do. Almost turns out to be the exact word that gets you back on the road, and it's also the word that gets you to that church basement every single Thursday for the rest of your life, whether you think you need it that week or not. You go back to the pawn shop on Delancey, where you hawked Mia's wedding ring in the worst stretch of it. It's long gone, sold off at auction years back. The owner, a guy named Lou, with reading glasses on a chain and the flat kindness of somebody who's seen every version of this walk through his door, tells you straight, no softening it. Level 8. The house. That word means something different to you now. You build Route 9 logistics 1 truck at a time, and you hire your first driver off a want ad you post at the same church basement where Frank still runs Thursday nights. Because a man with a gap in his resume and a bronze chip in his pocket is exactly the kind of man who shows up on time forever. 4 trucks becomes 14. Gross revenue crosses $2 million a year by your early 50s. Payroll goes out the 1st and the 15th. Never late once. Because you remember with total clarity what a bounce check feels like from underneath. You hear, secondhand, from a cousin of Dion's, that Duke passed away at that same video poker machine on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Correct change still sitting in the tray. Nobody at that casino was surprised. Everybody who knew him was sad anyway. The forecast came true. It usually does. You catch yourself thinking about his hands more than his face. The way they always hovered over the buttons, even between spins, like they were still working even when the rest of him had stopped. You knew those hands. You had those hands. You save for 11 months and buy a plain gold band, nothing close to what the original one cost, and you drive it out to Mia's mother's place, where she and Zoe have been living for 3 years now. You hold it out. She looks at it a long time and doesn't take it. Keep it in your pocket for now, she says. Show me first. You don't argue. You've learned the hard way that promises are the one currency you don't get to spend freely anymore. So for the next year, you don't ask her to wear anything. You just show up every Sunday, on time, the exact same way you used to show up for markers. Some Sundays she opens the door further than others. The ring rides in your glove box for 14 months before she ever puts it on, and neither of you makes a thing of the day she finally does. You buy a house outright, no mortgage, and the deed sits framed in the hallway, in the exact spot where your mother once kept a calendar counting down to rent day. You pay off her house too, quietly, that same spring. One wire transfer, no ceremony, because some debts you settle out loud, and some you settle by making sure nobody in your family ever has to count coins into a tin again. You still spot the camera in the corner of every room you walk into, an old reflex that never fully leaves, left over from 16 years of ceilings that were built to watch you. You still flinch, just a little, at the word free. One night, driving home past the riverboat you haven't set foot in for over a decade, you watch a young guy come out those doors laughing, up big by the look of it, his buddy pounding him on the back, the exact same way Dion once pounded yours. You know precisely what's sitting in that kid's chest right now, brighter than anything his job or his family has probably ever made him feel. You could pull over. Some nights you do. Tonight, you just watch the doors close behind him, because the hardest lesson this whole life ever taught you is this: you can't lock a door for somebody else. You can only tell them, honestly, exactly what's behind it, and hope they believe you faster than you ever believed Vic. That's the whole story.